Well, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you all for joining me in allowing us to learn more about what genetic preservation and cloning looks like in the pig world. Uh, we'll go around and do some introductions, but I'm Chad Martin, and I work for Indiana Pork as Director of Strategic Outreach, which includes the oversight of the Certified Indiana Bred program. We have about 100 breeders in the state of Indiana, give and take, that support and provide purebred barrows and gilts for youth exhibitors throughout the state to show and provide an opportunities for them to win awards at the Indiana State Fair. We felt really compelled as our committee to do some work to do some outreach and education for our producers that join us year in and year out. And so we decided that we've been hearing some questions about this whole concept. And so we felt like it would be great to have this, and with some conversations that I've had with the folks at Transova and then Jim as well, Jim Kilmer of Monticello, White County, with some of his experience, I felt like we would convene this conversation here. So we'll start out and go around, and we'll have ladies first. We'll have Diane introduce herself, and we'll go around.
Okay, thank you very much for inviting me and including me in your conference today. My name is Diane Brook. I've been with Transova Genetics 43 years as of December 1. And so I know you're figuring out how old I am. I was only 5 when I started, just if you're doing the math. I have been involved at various levels of embryology, lab management, etc., but started with the cloning program actually way back in 1997. And so that kind of tells you how old I am, because Dolly the sheep was cloned in 1996, right? And so we made our first clone, was born in 1998, and I actually did the embryology for that work. And we've been doing it ever since. Today, we do cattle, pigs, sheep, and goats, all livestock species, and I'm the manager of the program, the Advanced Technologies Division of Transova. So that means that I manage cloning for livestock and then gene editing that is combined with cloning for livestock.
Very good.
Who'd like to go next?
We'll follow up with Garrett. Maybe Garrett froze up on us a little bit.
It's froze for me. I'm not sure if it's internet or.
I hear you. There, you're back.
I have been employed with Transova for 11 years now. Started out much like Diane, did some embryology work, traveled a lot with the teams there doing OPUs all across the country. Got into the cloning side of things after I worked with Diane and ended up doing a clone for my farm. So a little bit about myself. Grew up in Western Maryland. I grew up on a cattle production farm, and we raised pigs. Got into the show pig thing when I was probably 5 or 6. We've been doing it ever since. So we run about 100 sows now, and I utilize cloning in some of my herd, and that's why I'm very passionate about the technology here that I get to work with Transova, and then the opportunity that I have to get to work with a lot of clients around the country that utilize our technology.
And Jim.
Yeah, Jim Kilmer here at the Kilmer Swine Farm. I have not very good knowledge about the cloning, but I've had experience in utilizing it in our herd and here at Kilmer Swine Farm, and which we, up to making about 250 sows, running strictly for show pigs. So using genetics to, make, utilizing that, the scientists to improve what we're doing to make better hogs, I guess, is what we're trying to do when I used the cloning part of things. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so Jim, you were one of the first breeders that launched into certified Indiana bred going 8-9 years ago. So definitely glad to have you join us for your experience and input today. So I know you kind of touched on this a little bit, Diane, about Transova genetics and some of the background there. But maybe go into more specifics, particularly about your work in the pig world, and how that got started, and maybe some successes that you and Garrett can maybe share about that.
Sure. Sure. So Transova Genetics does the whole ART toolbox, which includes ET, IVF, sex semen, cloning, recipient solutions, gene editing, etc. But in pigs, we don't tend to use all of those technologies. But our initial work started with cloning pigs for medical purposes, for biopharmaceutical purposes. And most people don't realize this, but today, actually the largest group that we clone is pigs. And we do commercial pigs, which would be pigs like Mr. Kilmer's, show pigs. We do sows, we do boars, barrows. I mean, just anything that you is a rock star that you want an identical twin on, that's what we do. We make you another identical twin. But we also do a lot of work that is included in the gene editing and cloning sector, and those pigs would be used for medical purposes for the most part, biopharmaceutical purposes. They can either be biomedical models for disease. For example, you can make a pig that carries the gene for cystic fibrosis, and then you can study the pigs instead of doing research on children, which of course would not be acceptable. You can make pigs that carry agriculture purposes, enhancements, for example, PRRS resistant pigs. Those can be made using gene editing and cloning. You can make pigs that are gene edited for xenotransplantation, which would be the potential harvest of a kidney, for example, from a pig to be transferred into a human. That's xenotransplantation. And so there's a lot of uses for pigs. Our particular involvement is heavily on the cloning side, but we also have some interest in trying to do a little work resurrecting some ET and maybe IVF solutions in the future. And we're working on those now.
How long will that take? I had a conversation with a good friend of mine about ET embryo transfer work, and goodness, I think that could really exponentially help us out. But I mean, are we 5 years away, 20 years away, or
no, we're closer than that. We have all the tools. We already do the core competencies. You know, we have the IVF lab, for example. We have the ability to do laparoscopic work. And so I don't think we're actually doing it now, but we have to make sure that it is commercially feasible. The rates have to be acceptable for our clients. And at this point, it's too soon to tell. And so, yeah, you know, my answer is going to be stay tuned. Because, you know, we need to get to a point where we feel like it's commercially feasible for all of us. Yeah. And we're not quite there yet.
Garrett, walk us through the process. So those of us in the show pig world, purebred business, what's their first step in this process, and how do we get from that point to start and we're actually getting clones on the ground? Maybe you could help us understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. A lot of the questions I yield from pig producers in the show pig industry there is kind of what do the costs look like, or what's my steps? So one thing we'll touch is the DNA express tissue banking, which is the cheapest of our services. That is basically taking a genetic sample and we are freezing it to be thawed back out at a later time to create a genetic preservation. I like this tool for, you know, we have a lot of, you know, still heightened security and concerns of African swine fever. before something like that entered the US, or as it was entering, I think it'd be a good opportunity for producers to go ahead and DNA bank or express tissue bank, some of their top end females. Maybe those would be ones that they're not immediately planning to clone, but maybe would like to in the future. The most commonly sold product for us is the genetic preservation itself, which I think is what we're giving you guys the opportunity if you sign up to be an Indiana pork producer or part of the group there. You'll have a chance of winning that, but that's a $1,650 value. And we do run a special once a year there in November where we drop the price of that a little bit too. But that would be your first step of actually the cloning process. So the genetic preservation, we'll send you a kit. You'll actually, it more or less looks like a tag, an ear punch tag anymore that Diane's holding up one right now. So we'll send you that. It comes with four small tubes. We'll take the genetic sample there. You'll send that back into us on refrigeration. We do not want those froze, and that's always a big thing we try to hit home on. You can see Diane's kind of loading the tube there, but it looks like that. Most of the time, I personally haven't restrained them. I've just walked up to them as they're eating or doing something like that, and been able to take a few samples. But that is the creation or the start of the genetic preservation. From that point, I'll kick it to Diane and let her kind of go through the next process if that works for you.
Okay, so once you're going to take 3 to 4 of those TSU tubes of tissue out of the ear of the animal, and then you're going to return them to our laboratory. It takes approximately 2 weeks to finish the culture, at which time we'll freeze about 10 million cells. That's more than you'll ever need in a lifetime to clone repeatedly. So it's a one and done service. Once the cell line is complete, we can enter into a cloning contract with you. It does take a while to get this accomplished, mostly because of the long synchronization of the pigs. And Jim knows this. He's been through it. But you're going to end up feeding those pigs on the prescribed dates that we have agreed upon. And you're going to feed them matrix for 18 days. You're going to take them off matrix for 4 days, and you'll give them a product called Corylon, which is human chorionic gonadotrophic hormone. And the next day we'll clone. And then 4 to 5 days later, we'll transfer the embryos. And we're going to transfer about 130 embryos per recipient or surrogate mother. These are great animals, whatever animals, female animals you've chosen to be the recipients. And you want to make sure those animals are good maternal gilts or sows that are going to get pregnant on the first service, that are going to be able to take care of their little piglets. And we will do those transfers into those sows, and we'll see about anywhere from 50 to 75% of them become pregnant on by the first preg check, which can occur anywhere from 35 to 50 days. And so then you may see go ahead.
Oh, real quick, Diane, so from a biosecurity standpoint, are those recipient sows potentially coming from the breeder that they're going to wind up to, or is that a surprise to you all?
Yes, and Jim will share his story where he uses his own pigs. And that's how he maintains biosecurity. We do provide recipients that we get from a sole provider. Those pigs are kept at our facility with no other pigs. And we make sure that we maintain a biosecure program throughout that process as well. When we do transfers, we make sure that if they haul into a facility, the pigs never touch the ground. They'll be taken right off the trailer onto a table. The surgery will be performed and they'll go right back onto the trailer. And so we just make sure that there's never any commingling of pigs, that those pigs never walk on the same ground that other pigs have walked on. And you try to keep as much integrity to your biosecurity as possible. Of course, everybody has their own programs. And we're trying to help them maintain those programs. So once you've done the transfers, you're going to have chosen for us to gestate and farrow out those pigs, or you have chosen to implant into your own sows, gestate and farrow those pigs on your facility. I'd say the majority of the people select to do it into our gilts and sows, but not everybody does. It just depends on what your needs are and if you have the ability to have recipients and can manage them. They'll have the normal gestation for that particular breed. And then the piglets will be born. In general, we'll see litters that are slightly lower than what you're going to see in your other pigs. We'll probably average about 4 to 5 piglets per litter that's farrowed in. And those piglets will be identical twins to the animal that you chose to be the genetic donor, the rock star. So for example, Jim has shown some phenomenal gilts and has some phenomenal sows. And that's what he's elected to use for his genetic donors. But it could also be a barrow that you showed and won the National Western, or a boar that's done particularly well, but maybe died early. Or a boar that you just need more semen from. In particular, we'll see people tend to really lean towards the sow families now. They understand the strength of having multiple sows that are identical twins that you can breed to different boars. And but it just depends on what your own needs are. Everybody's different. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. And so Jim, you've delved into this, and when did you decide to make this happen? And what was your motivation to get involved with this process?
I guess when we got into it, we kind of fell into it a little bit, or lucked into it a little bit. My son took a gilt down to the North American show in Louisville, and down there the rule is if you win grand or reserve grand, those hogs have to be they put them down and test for other things and drugs, and so you're pretty much sacrificing your grand and reserve pigs that have to die there. So I knew there was a chance that she could die, and I took that chance, and luckily she did. And I still at the show, I wasn't thinking, if she does win, and she happened to do it. We was walking to get the pictures, and one of my, good buddies said, "Hey, why don't you just clone that thing if she's dying?" And, that just, I guess, how it happened. So, the North American show, they let me, take the DNA from her, and we got started there. So, with that said, taking the, they went over taking the tissue samples and stuff like that. It is very simple. We've done a few of them now, so it's not hard at all. So we started there, and then we kind of dove right into it. And with that said, it's been very successful for us. We were lucky right off the bat to get that first flushing or first cloning. We got 8 piglets out of that, live ones that we sold a couple of them, and then we kept most of them around here. And I, at the time when we did it, this was a pure York that we cloned, and I would have never have bred her cross if she was the only one I had. So I really lucked into it to have 6 of them here that I started thinking, well, maybe that York line that's been real good for us, try to put that in our crossbred sows or lines. So I bred a lot of them actually cross, just to try to put some of that purity back into this my crossbred lines, and I that's really probably benefited more than if she was just alive by herself, because I know I would never probably bred her across. So, but yes, we kind of fell into it, but I'm sure glad we did, because it's really been beneficial to us and making our sows better and deeper. And like you said, it's just made us have more of them to use, and actually we're putting more in here next week. The same thing, just to make some younger generation sows that with the same line there. So
Interesting. So, what would be, what would your recommendation be as far as, obviously that gilt, I remember that gilt 2019, and she, as a Yorkshire enthusiast, was definitely off the charts quality, one of the better Yorkshire females I'd ever seen, that still showed as a market hog and had to go and be sacrificed to harvest. And, but obviously that was probably a no-brainer from a lot of people in that barn that saw that gilt. But as you've decided to maybe do other females in your herd, have you done more than just those? And what makes you decide to select a female to go into this process?
So yeah, I actually did the mother of that particular gilt that we cloned. We call it like leap sow, which is leaps and bounds sow. It was the York sow. So we did her and had clonings out of her also. She would be the only one I've done other than the original one we did, which she was a dominator daughter. But now, like I said, I figuring things out. I like the dominator stuff a little better. So I went ahead and, like I said, we're going ahead and put more of those in just to, make, they're coming on their 5th, 6th parity. So I just want some of the younger to keep going with. They're still competing and such. So, like she said before, I think there's different uses if you want to do a boar and, and barras to make, if you keep them with testicles in them, if you make them a boar. I think there's some choice in doing that. I really like the sow part of things. Once found that sow that really clicks for us, and that's that's where I like it the best, and keep that, making more of them to have just instead of 2 litters a year, you might have 12 litters a year of that particular sow. So.
And you can test out different board genetics on those females,
yes,
see
definitely.
what, get a little more progress instead of breeding them all to the same board. So Garrett,
Yeah.
what are some other, Diane, did you have a comment too?
Oh, just I think that if we can tell you one thing, one take home, the cloning process is really about making the irreplaceable replaceable. Right? That's how our guilt of Jim's was incredible. She was a rock star. She was probably a once in a lifetime animal. And this just allows you to make once in a lifetime more than once in a lifetime. The biggest reason people are going to use cloning is to clone outliers like that. They want to make more semen, more embryos, more piglets, but they also may be choosing to clone because they have very rare genetics. They may have castrated genetics that they want to get in an intact form. And that's what you get when you clone a barrow. They're born as intact. And you may also have very elite genetics that die young before they have contributed semen or embryos or piglets to your herd. And we do have the ability to harvest tissue that can be grown into a cell line on a deceased animal up to several days after the death event. It is the only way that you can harvest the DNA and produce more from it from a deceased animal. Most people don't realize that. They have a little window of time that if they can get that tissue to us and keep it cool, but not frozen, I can't emphasize that enough, that we can make a cell line from it, and we can clone from it.
Interesting. Yeah, Garrett. So when you talk about some of these costs and maybe some other stories that you have gleaned in your work, what are some of the other breeders gaining from this that you've seen? Maybe some other insights, but then also maybe help us walk through the costs, the initial costs from start to finish. You mentioned some dollar figures there, but once the cloning process and get clones on the ground, what are some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like Jim hit on, and myself, from what I personally have previous done so far was females. Like Jim touched on, I love the versatility that we have with being able to use multiple different boars, basically in the same crop season. So the new boars for the fall rollout. We have the ability to try to use a few of the newer different ones, and then also be able to use something that we already knew was proven. So it gives you the opportunity to kind of turn more generations faster than maybe some others can with the technology. But another side of the whole deal, I think that we see is the boar studs using this as an opportunity to recreate a boar that maybe died too soon. It's very common knowledge now, but the tricked out boar passed away last fall. I'd say the last litters were ferreted there in December outside of frozen semen. And then, this fall we had the opportunity starting pretty much in August to utilize clones out of tricked out. I believe PBG, Premium Blend Genetics, rolled out, I think, 4 clones. It was amazing. If you haven't looked at the pictures of what those clones look like, I'd encourage you to go to their website and click on that. Literally carbon copies of what Tricked Out did. The backside of that, is we already know how the boar sired. So I think the opportunities that we're going to see, with success out of those clones this summer could be astronomical, just because it's so predictable. So the advantage there, we've now made more, so even if he hadn't passed away, now they would have had the ability to have, four more clones working. Just neat technology. I think you touched on the Barra side of things. A lot of the calls I get also are, I'm at a terminal show. Can we take a sample and clone our barrow? Another common question, which will clear up, if you clone a female, you can only make females. So if you clone a male, you can only make males. I get that question a fair amount. For me, opportunity wise, so I had bought a gilt there a few summers ago. Spent a good bit for me. Looked at it as an opportunity to multiply what I had purchased and get more revenue back by having more litters. That has worked out very successfully. One I think misconception that we get is, the clones aren't as good as the original. Maybe Jim could test or talk about that for a second, but I know personally in my herd, they've bred, farrowed, and had the exact same situations that the originals have had. So if the originals, 10 to 13 pig average, the clones have been a 10 to 13 pig average. For me, breeding, if the females already that I had cloned was easy breeding, the clones have been easy breeding. And I think that falls in with the cattle side of things. When we do some flush work, we have donors that are maybe notorious for not being big producers of embryos. I think same could be said on the pig side of things. So if you have a gilt that, already isn't a big producer, and maybe that's another reason you're cloning her, you're going to get very similar results. I usually don't see big changes in that. The only key factor, I think Diane would agree, is environmental changes. So if an environmental change made that animal better or worse, for instance, a barrow maybe that got slowed down in his growth stage because he was sick, but then went on to win a show. Anything environmentally that happened to that pig, we're not replicating. So we're just replicating DNA. What other, was there anything else you wanted me to touch on? Jim, I think it'd be good if you gave a testament of how those clone females have worked for you in your herd. Obviously, we've had success there, or we wouldn't be creating more of them for you. But You want to touch
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, well, like what you said, some people question what, do they look the exact same as the original? And to that I say, there are some details of like, okay, what kind of care do you take with them? How did you feed them for a show? Did you not? Like our particular first round of them, those 8, I mean, they were all very, elite type of, piglets and through the nursery stage and such. And then, we did show a couple of those through the winter months, and winter months compared to the summer months, it's just different. Pigs, if you're feeding for the summer, feeding for the winter, it's different environment. So they weren't maybe just exactly the same, but I think the quality was still there. So, and then sticking with that, I did a sow that was the older sow. At this point, she was getting some age to her. Guys that've gone back and used older stuff. Well, we've year after year, it's genetics are changing, so you're going back and getting genetics. But you got to remember what they looked like 5-6 years ago. So, today's age, you're not going to necessarily take a sow as 10 years ago and decide, hey, yeah, she's gonna look like a rock star in a show ring right now. No, I mean, it's just, time has changed, and what these, I guess the genetics look like now. So, people went back and used old stuff. Yeah, they're not going to look maybe exactly the same as it was, as you remembered it compared to what it is today. But, with those originally 8 sows that we had, or clones, they all, I think how I put it, all 8 of them, how we bred them different, each one did what I thought, that particular original clone would could do. I mean, all of them were very good. I mean, we bred some cross, some purebred. Some of them went into the crossbred rings and won big shows, being half York with that. And then we've taken, in the Yorkshire ring purebred shows, they've gone along real well with that. So, I think, with that, I think, yes, I think it's been very good, and very consistent between all of them. And even the ones I sold to those other guys, they had very good success with them. And so, I think they're very similar in that way for sure.
I'll add a comment if I may.
Yeah.
So all adult animals are the results of G by E, genetics times environment. With a cloned animal, we are making you a genetic match. Genomically, genetically, they're a match, but we cannot possibly mimic the environment that happened or occurred to that animal that became the rock star, right? Now, that being said, I'm going to share 2 different scenarios with you. One is a longitudinal study that we actually did in cattle, where we followed animals coming back into the Transova system and determined how they performed in ET and IVF programs to determine what their reproductive function was. And this was a huge study that I analyzed for over 7 years, and 9,000 embryos in the study. And the results are very simple. The cloned animals performed exactly the same as their non-cloned peers. That means they produced the same amount of embryos, same pregnancy rates, all of it was the same. And they tend to perform in this manner. The more highly heritable the trait, the more likely the clone will exhibit it. All right. And so you will still have a bell-shaped curve. If you have 5 genetic donors, you're going to have an outlier on each side that underperforms and overperforms, and 3 right in the middle that perform exactly as the genetic donor did. And that's the same in pigs. Now, that being said, I get asked a lot about show animals. If we had a very elite show animal, we'd like to make another very elite show animal. And I will always tell people that's not a realistic expectation. Does it happen? Yes, it happens actually quite a bit. But is it a realistic expectation? And no, it's probably not. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the reality is that about 25% of that super elite rock star is genetics. Granted, we're going to give you a match on that. That's a done deal. 50% is animal husbandry. That's how you cared for them, how you fed them, what, all the things you do to get a show animal ready. And then the last 25% is dumbass luck. Did you get the right judge? Were there politics? Did they step on a stone? Did something happen? And so when people want to recreate a super elite champion, it's not a realistic expectation to expect that you will win the same prize that you won on the first one. But it is a realistic expectation to know that you are going to have the same breeding piece that you had. The genetics are the same. And on paper, you can line up 92 clones and their genes will just lockstep match with each other. And so every time you breed clone 1 and clone 10, to the specific boars, it's as if you were breeding the original. And so the other thing I want to mention, and it just has to do with spot patterns in pigs. Because you have some breeds that have very elite spot patterns or stripe patterns, you need to understand that the melanoblastic coat color can migrate differently in any kind of a twin. That's a natural occurring twin, that's a split embryo, that's a clone. And so what does that mean? That means that if we have a hamp litter, you're going to have varying degrees of width on your belt. The higher they are to purebred, the truer they are to the belt. But if you're cloning a crossbred hamp-looking pig, you can have varying belts. And that doesn't mean that they're not clones and that they're not twins. That just means that's how the melanoblasts migrate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it sure does. And even on the purebred side, Jim, how does the NSR recognize those? Just, do they get a separate registration number?
Yeah, so like we actually had to send the original one got DNA or she had to pass her DNA test. So and then every clone we had to send a sample in to test them also, and they check it with that, and then on the pedigree it actually will say has a different I don't remember exactly, but you can tell it's not original. You can tell it's like a clone animal. So, but yeah, so it all of them came back as the exact same results in the DNA, but on the paper, each one shows that they're a clone
They're
animals.
a unique animal. Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting. Good to know. Well, as we wrap up, I know we've got some sports events and some of these other things coming up this evening, but any other final comments between the three of us, three of you here? I appreciate your time, and then we'll wrap this up here.
If you have any interest in learning more about the process, you can look on our website, www.transova.com. You can call either myself or Garrett, and we'd be happy to answer your questions. That's what we're here for. You'll see Garrett at most of the major events. I do hit a few, but we're here to support and answer any questions you may have and define a program that would be uniquely qualified to meet your needs.
Awesome. And what I'll do is as we upload this on YouTube, I'll put that contact information, the website, in the comments of that video. But I wanted to mention also and Garrett alluded to this, that the breeders that enroll within the Certified Indiana Bred program by February 15th, we'll have a drawing of those breeders after that date to win a free preservation kit sponsored by Transova to the tune of a $1,650 value. So postcards are hitting the mailboxes amongst your Christmas cards here in the next couple of days or to early next week. But go online, you can use the QR code here or just go to indianabred.com and enroll in the program. And that is an $800 enrollment, and that allows all of our breeders that have purebreds, gilts, and barrows to be able to be eligible for those youth to take them to the Indiana State Fair to potentially win $500 per class that are from enrolled breeders. And so this will be going into our 9th year. We've surpassed $500,000 of giveaway award money since the beginning of the program. And so we're very thankful for all of our sponsors. And just as importantly, we're very thankful for breeders like Jim Kilmer and the groups of really high-end breeders across the state of Indiana that do a great job of raising some elite genetics for our youth to exhibit throughout the state and into our Indiana State Fair. So join that list of breeders. We'd love to have any small breeders, big breeders alike can join our certified Indiana bred program. And we've been seeing great benefit and impact from that. So with that being said, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll see you down the road. I appreciate your time this evening and providing some insights. So just another tool that we could use to help make pigs better. It's always a goal that we all need to strive to do. And so with that being said, appreciate your time, and we'll wrap this up this evening then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.